Okay, so then there's Joyce and John.
Yeah.
Now, they were a married couple. John had a first wife that he had 3 children with, and he got a vasectomy after that. They got divorced. He got remarried to a younger wife, and she wanted to have children. He went to the doctor to try to reverse the vasectomy and was told that it wasn't possible. So they came to you.
Yeah.
In the beginning, she would show up to your house to get the sample, and then she would try to drive home, but then she would get lost, and, it became a kind of a mess. So then you would go to their house, and you would, go to the bathroom and give them the sample.
Yeah.
What was your relationship with Joyce and John?
Especially with heterosexual couples, I kept the lines a little bit shorter because I felt like I am really helping them and like they have to build their own family. He is 100% the father. I don't want to interfere in anything like, I'm not important in that regard. I wanted really to them create 100% John as a father with the children. And so there was like a little communication with them, like not a lot, after she got pregnant. And these are basically the ones I feel like for them it's a bit more painful than for lesbian or single moms because especially for lesbians, they're like, okay, this is it. We cannot have a baby together.
There's no plan B here.
Yeah. You're our helper, and come help us. And with the heterosexual couples, I always felt this more like, a bit more tragic. There's always a story behind, and of course, their choice was to have a baby with their husband. So I really try to be as respectful and as helpful as possible towards them.
What percentage of the couples that you helped were heterosexual versus lesbian?
I think maybe only 20% was heterosexual.
Got it.
Yeah.
Was there ever level of jealousy or bitterness from the husband because he's having to use another man to raise a child that's technically not his? And, was there any sort of, did you ever get into a fight with any of these guys or anything of that sort?
I must say, I'm leaving John now out of the equation because he said some, things in the documentary. I'm, shocked. But for the other men, I can speak that they're absolute heroes. They opened me with, they welcomed me with open arms, and they were support because some men, I heard from other stories that the man would say, "Oh, I let my wife is picking it up, and I will not show my face." But my experience is I was like, wow, these guys are they deserve a statue because it's really something that's that you can be so positive and just involved and okay, cool. That's. I was so surprised how cool they are and how good fathers they turned out to be, and it's amazing. I that's always something special, and I never had anyone being jealous or creepy or strange or because I could imagine that some would be like, this is my wife, but maybe that's my appearance. I'm not very a guy that is trying to impress. I say, I totally respect when a good couple. You cannot break up a good couple, in my opinion. That's my rule. So especially when they're in pain of the infertility, you have to be super respectful and I really respect them.
Okay, there was also Nicolette, who was a lesbian. According to the documentary, Nicolette said you told her that you had helped 2 families and she would be the 3rd, which I guess during that time may have been true.
Yeah.
Then they interviewed Dr. Max Kerfs, who was a clinical embryologist at Isala Fertility Center. That was one of the centers that you would go to. And according to him, there's a written agreement with donors that they would not be active at other clinics. So is this something that you were given and you signed and so forth?
Yeah, I had to sign an agreement, but I don't remember that they would be like telling me like this explicitly, like, oh, you cannot do. It was more like, hey, welcome. Okay, they would talk about genetics and they would ask you some things. And I think that because there was a clinic in Groningen in the north, and they would ask really like, like, have you been a donor before? Yes or no? And I say, yes, I've been a donor. And then they say, okay, you cannot help. So I remember that I would tell if they would ask explicitly. And in my imagination, because I think you want to know how this. Okay.
Yeah.
When I started in the past with the anonymous donors, there will be no. You could go and donate in all the clinics that I've been and more because there were more clinics. Because it was anonymous. It didn't really matter how often you will donate. So the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, so that's the sort of United States that they keep the guidelines for donors. They have like the calculation of 25 children per 800,000 inhabitants. So this would mean that in the Netherlands you could have like one donor. If you applied that number, you could have like 500 children, basically 530. In those days, those anonymous days, they would have also like this equation. Like, okay, in the north they would have like this number, in the south, but they really didn't communicate amongst each other. So that was my understanding, that you can be a donor and you can also go to another state to donate. And I would also see like different donors, like or the same donors that I would see in other clinics. So in my understanding, it was like not really a problem at all. And I would expect that they would like sit down and say like, okay, we called the other clinic and we heard that you, or if it was something was wrong. So that's sort of like a gray area where I'm like, okay, were they not really like checking on donors because they had a huge shortage and they were happy with any donor? Or were they not strict? Or is this just like a policy that they, in one clinic, they would really like say to you, okay, if you say we really want to. So, yeah, it's my understanding, it was like this.
Well, yeah. According to Dr. Kurfs, a donor was not allowed to have more than 25 children in the Netherlands. And the reason is to avoid the risk of siblings meeting each other and dating without knowing that they're siblings. The Netherlands is a relatively small country, has 17 million people. And according to this doctor, they had found out that you had deceived the clinic because I guess they had received an anonymous email saying that you had fathered 150 children. And you had also donated to what they say is 11 different clinics.
Six
different clinics.
Yeah, the other
the documentary said 11, so yeah, it's actually six.
They're like six like sperm banks, official sperm banks, and the others were like clinics where I would go with a private donation.
Got it.
They say all that, yeah, but it's
right. So the clinic found out that you had 102 children through different sperm banks through the Netherlands. They told some of the patients who became very upset. And then at that point, you were banned from donating in any Dutch clinics. Is this accurate?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you found out that you were now banned from donating, how'd you feel?
I was surprised. Like I say, over the years, they somehow, I think under pressure of the foundation Donorkind, they would sort of like constantly, how do you say it, like shame clinics and shame like donors like into lowering the numbers. So I think over the years the clinics sort of like took a more strong standpoint on 25, because I remember the first clinic that I went to in Leiden, I called them up. Like you can call them up and ask them for what is the amount of children that you have already create with my sperm, sort of say. They would say 35. So at one clinic, they already had more than this so-called guideline. So I think that all went under pressure from the foundation, Donor Child, to sort of say, okay, we have to make stricter guidelines. I don't think the clinics themselves were very concerned with that number, because they knew the real situation. And the clinics, they know that sometimes I was the only donor with 2 other guys. Like, we had to provide for all the state. So they were super happy with any donor, and they were not really like, overly concerned with, oh, maybe there's some more children, because we already came from a worse time where it was all anonymous and children would have no information about the donors. So yeah, that's basically what the situation. It's kind of like, you're like in a transitional times where from anonymous to known donors. And also one thing that I want to add, like this doctor, he's saying we have a limit of 25 in the Netherlands, a cap. But his colleagues in all the other clinics, they work with Cryos, the Danish bank. And yeah, they would ship 25 from one donor. They would ship 25 to the Netherlands. But the same donor, well, they showed it in the documentary, because I was also a donor at Cryos. They would ship it to all these other countries worldwide. So him saying like, oh, we keep a very strict cap of 25 can be for the Netherlands. But the parents that have a donor from Cryos, they also would end up with hundreds of siblings worldwide. So that's why I am sort of like surprised that I can understand from a moral standpoint, from it was like, was I obligated to tell the real number or not, or but if you look like the hard numbers, I am not an exception. There's many people in the Netherlands that have a donor from Denmark, and they have maybe 25 siblings in the Netherlands, but like hundreds of siblings worldwide. And somehow that's no problem with all the arguments that they give. So yeah, I think that they, like, okay, you can say many things about me, that's fine, but I think that they're not really open and honest, especially not in the documentary. And